Who is the weirdest person you have encountered? This dude in my high school class was being made fun of for being a virgin, and he just stood up and screamed newer. I've fricked a horse, and that's one moment I'll never forget. Frick, that's not just digging yourself in a hole, that's drilling to the center of the earth. I saw this guy by himself, riding a massive unicycle through the park at full speed with sticks and branches attached all over his helmet. He had this dead serious expression too. In kindergarten I asked this girl if she was in line to go to the bathroom, and she slapped me in the face. It was a weird, character developing day. A kid I went to school with in 1st or 2nd grade used to have a weird booger problem. Half the time his nose was always runny, and when he sneezed, he would have these foot-long boogers hanging out of his nose as he walked up to the front of the classroom to get tissues. When his nose wasn't runny, he would pick his nose and create golf ball-sized booger balls that he kept in his desk and played with. At recess, he wouldn't run like a normal kid. He would spin his arms like a windmill as he was running. He was smart as crap though, but if you ever asked for his help with something, he would stand over your shoulder, usually with a rope of boogers hanging out of his nose. He was trying to make room for his huge brain. Guy I knew was a real character. Like he felt like someone that was pulled out of some sitcom and thrown into reality. Was 18 but had a full dad mustache and Bob Ross hair. Didn't own a car. Roller skated everywhere. Was constantly late to work for absurd reasons I could never tell if made up or not. That is, attacked by bird. Had frick you printed on side of glasses. No one noticed for several months. Wore short shorts and several sizes too big polo shirt and sandals every time I saw him outside uniform. Probably more I am just blanking on. Sounds like a fun guy to talk to once and maybe just once. A guy I met online. He ended up threatening me by saying he would cut himself if I didn't video chat him so he could jerk off to my face. Oh cool, a problem that solves itself. Guy on my hall freshman year. Walked around campus with a small tape recorder to record conversations with everyone he met. He was always upfront about it and wouldn't record unless asking permission first. He would mail the tapes home weekly for his mom to catalog. Showered once per week and peed in jars in his room. Kept missing his 8 AM class, so he started sleeping in the classroom overnight. Skipped his finals to run a half marathon, which he trained for by wearing ankle weights everywhere. I think he was asked to leave school after 1 year. Near my grandparents' place there's this old woman, probably around 80 years old, who shuffles down the street wearing only a towel. It doesn't matter if you beep or nearly back into her while reversing out of the driveway, she will keep her head down and keep shuffling along. My parents almost hit her once and my grandfather has almost hit her around 3 times now, with their cars. I once witnessed her shuffle across 6 lanes in peak hour traffic to the sound of 20 beeping cars without even batting an eye. It's an absolute miracle that she hasn't been run over yet, although to tell the truth, I haven't seen her for a while, so maybe she was. I'm thinking she may have had dementia or Alzheimer's or something. Hopefully, the reason you haven't seen her is because she was taken to a home. This kid in middle school that once bragged about getting a $100 bill for sucking his stepdad's dong. He showed off that Benjamin so proudly that we didn't deny that he actually did it. Same kid jacked off onto our 7th grade English teacher's back pillow during one of our reading session. Later went to a juvie center after stabbing his mom. Found out later recently that he's close to becoming a pilot. Him 22 now, and all this happened quite a while ago. He sounds like a kid that had massive family problems. I mean massive. Like he desperately needed therapy 10 years ago massive. I actually kinda feel bad for him. Saw a dude in neon orange bounding down the side of the road waving his arms and hollering. I don't know what happened, but he's now my brother-in-law. A kid in my year who was decently well known for masturbating throughout the school day. In class, in the bathroom, at lunch. A little bit of pocket pool to get him settled, I guess. He also mumbled every word he ever spoke, and followed a girl home to say she had a nice butt. Then, was promptly hit with a restraining order. Pretty sure he did more than just say she has a nice butt, if an order was granted. When I was 16, my neighbor gave my number to this guy he knew just because he was gay and wanted us to meet, and we texted for like 2 days. After that I wasn't interested, but he would still bombard me with texts. Never hung out or anything, but saw each other a few times around town. Till this dang day almost 8 years later, I'm 25 in June, he still finds some way to contact me, whether it be social media, Tumblr, email. I never reply but he keeps trying. Creeps me the frick out. This guy Tom I went to college with. This was around 2010, but it was like he was stuck in the early 90s late 80s with both his mannerisms and his fashion. He was in his late 30s and giving college a second try because something happened to him the first time he tried college at the age of 18. Something traumatic that caused him to drop out and be stuck in that mindset. He always wore acid wash jeans, pump up Nikes, old surfing belly shirts, and had his hair in the style of Uncle Jesse from Full House. He also talked to himself in public, mumbling on about the government being evil, and he would sometimes burst out into anger if you tried to talk to him. I had a friend in high school who also was stuck in the 80s because of something traumatic that had happened to him before high school. I assume cyberbullying. He didn't have a phone, so he would just come to my door asking to hang out. We lived like 10 kilometers apart. He didn't use a calculator in math exams and would refuse using any computer. He was a decent guy, he just didn't have many friends. I was on vacation with my family in California, staying at a motel. I was hungry, so I decided to go find one of the outside vending machines. I ended up on the ground floor, and as I'm deciding what to get, someone knocks on the door across from the vending machine from the inside. I didn't really think anything of it at first, but then it happened again a minute later. Don't judge, I'm an indecisive person. Okay, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted. After a third knock, the door opened and this 25-year-old guy rode out on the tiniest goddamn tricycle I've ever seen. He honked a teeny tiny horn on it as he passed me, rode around in circles in the parking lot for a minute, then honked again as he passed to ride back into the hotel room. The door closed behind him once he cleared the doorway. So that's what the Eagles were singing about. Dude who I will refer to as Derek is yelling at another dude on a bus for giving him attitude. I interject and tell Derek to cool his jets. Derek takes grave offense to this and goes after me. At first I assumed that Derek was just another ageaholic on public transit and would simmer down after being called out. I was mistaken. You see, the reason I had called him out was because it was my stop and I wouldn't have to deal with him. When he followed me off the bus assuming we were having an intellectual discussion, I realized that Derek was on a whole other plane of existence. This incident took place nearly a year ago and my memory of the smaller details is hazy. However, Derek flaunted his own intelligence before diving off the deep end by stating that he had control over reality. I play dumb, but a tactic I use in situations where I may be in danger for reasons only my subconscious is actively aware of. Derek doesn't take kindly to me doubting his ability to summon hexes and spells. As I cross the street he screams that he is cursing me. When I nod and with a chipper gee willikers voice say that's nice, Derek loses it and screams, "I hope you get hit by a bus." I assume that he went on to perform a hex, but as far as I am aware I haven't been hit by a bus. Hope Derek is doing okay. I met a guy that thought he could kill people with his mind. I asked him to kill me to prove it and he said he did not want to kill me. He would also have conversations on his flip phone even though it was clear he was just pretending to actually talk to someone. Bit late to the party, but this is a story I loving telling. I was working at a major retail store in receiving, mostly unloading the truck that comes in from the distribution center. We lost a few people, so 2 new people were hired. One was an old guy, made a note to remember his name but I knew he wasn't gonna be there more than a month. The other was a short, maybe 5'4", black guy named Gary, name changed. Now the first thing you noticed about this guy is that he's wearing a dog collar, and not a nice dog collar. It's an old dog collar, like he stole it from his neighbor's dog. So I'm in the truck, pulling boxes out and dropping them onto the belt. I start talking to this guy and within about 2 minutes he informs me that he is in fact a furry and that he's gay. And this wasn't just me. Everyone he met he made sure that they knew he was gay and a furry. The next 2 or 3 months that he worked there were both awful because he was a terrible worker and hilariously entertaining. One night we had a guy in the back helping out. After we finish unloading the truck he, kind of sarcastically, says, "Oh, I'm going home to watch anime." Gary later goes up to him and says, "Oh man, We gotta talk about anime sometime. Enthusiastically he proceeds to talk about his favorite anime girl and some anime I have never heard of and the other guy has never heard of 7 Deadly Sins or something similar. Another day we get to work and we find out we don't have a truck scheduled that day. Awesome. Get to leave early and can have a pretty relaxed shift. So we decide to load up the pallet trailer. As I'm on the forklift getting pallets, Gary and another unloader and waiting for me to bring them over so they move them around in the trailer. Gary then asks the other unloader, "Hey, wanna know about some really weird fetish stuff?" and then tells him a story involving a gimp suit. He openly talked about all the nasty things he wanted to do to one of the managers, his various fetishes, his love for anime, and other things. He had also formerly worked for another major retailer and would always talk about it like it was the greatest thing ever, as if he had been in the major leagues and was now in the minors. And then he got fired for pulling a knife on a guy. There's this old dude who I often see jogging around town. Bald, long white beard, colorful hoodie, tight black leggings with marijuana leaves on it, big grin on his face and happily greets everyone he passes. It's clear he has zero fricks left to give. I always hope I'm looking at my future self whenever I pass him. Seems like a cool guy. Probably this girl I met on a charity getaway as a kid. This girl was very weird. She said that she literally thought she was a dog until she was 5, accidentally microwaved a cat because she thought it would dry it off after it got wet, and was just super gross and unsettling in general. I came to see quirky people, stayed to see dangerous mental illnesses. My uncle. I didn't really know him before I started working at his auto repair garage when I was 17. Claimed he was a vegetarian, but every day for lunch he would get something like meatloaf. He would always say he's giving meat a try. Every day. He smoked like a chimney, but claimed he never drank. One day I had to go to his house to help him move something. The walls of his house were literally lined floor to ceiling with empty vodka bottles filled with cigarette butts, and that's all there was in the house. No furniture, no decorations, just vodka bottles and a computer. It was the creepiest house I've even been in. One day at work he went to take a customer's car for a test drive and never came back. There were still customer cars on the lifts in the garage in various states of disassembly. A few years later I heard my uncle was found living in his car. Definitely the weirdest person I've ever known. I just want to say, as crazy and annoying this may sound, I'm not over exaggeration a single bit. I never thought someone like this would exist either. A customer at work, who comes into the store every now and then. She always asks tens, and nearly hundreds of questions about our items. She usually ends up buying a burrito, but before then, she'll ask certain type of questions about everything. Like this. Where are these burritos made from? Who made these? How many calories are in it? Are they vegan? Is this aluminum foil crafted from actual aluminum? Who farmed these cows inside the burrito? Are these beans black beans? What is the length of the burrito? She's asked so many unnecessary questions that it made one of my coworkers explode on her. I'm not kidding. When she comes in, it takes an hour to get her out of the store with what she came in for. We have to pass her around from one to another like a football in order to give each other a break. She's so weird. Not the weirdest, but her motives were weird. I was at a social gathering a couple of years ago, and a girl walked over, pointed at me and said, "I don't like you." The people I was with all looked super uncomfortable. I jokingly said, "Give it time to defuse attention." She walked away and started telling people how much of a dickhead I was. I'd never met her before in my life. Never even looked at her until then. Next time I saw her, she threw her arms around me and said, "I've missed you." I asked other people if she's just a bit of a weirdo and they said no. She's really normal. Bizarre. I think you accidentally walked into an anime. I work at a boba shop and J Club. Japanese club, aka people who loves anime, had a spring festival, so they all came into our shop after said festival. This one white girl came in wearing a full yukata, it's sort of like a toned down kimono, and ordered a tea in the weirdest Japanese accent. Can I please have a? I was so stunned and will never forget the encounter. I took her order the following week and confirmed she did not actually have an accent. A lot of people who cosplay go to surprisingly awkward lengths. I went to one of this anime festivals and the cosplayers were so cringy it turned me off to the whole idea. I'm sure there are sane people doing it, but they weren't there that day. I grew up going to class with this one guy from like grade 6 until I graduated high school, and he was the weirdest person I've ever met. He had a mullet. This was about 2009. And wore a big trench coat every single day. It did not matter the weather, you never saw this kid without a trench coat. He also carried a can of soup with him all the time in case he got hungry. Once in English he just pulls out his can of soup and a can opener and starts eating this cold soup in class. He would hiss and growl at people to communicate sometimes, but really casually, like you weren't sure if it happened. I was also partnered with him in math once and he got mad at me and ate my pencil. I was terrified of this kid. That was a lizard person. Definitely. In primary school I caught a dude trying to put ants into a girl's butt. He had her on floor outside the class with her trousers down. Seriously freaked up. I pulled him off and made a scene. Ended up attending primary and secondary with him. Always was unsure of that dude. Worked with a 65-year-old busser at a chain restaurant. He was an outspoken conspiracy theorist and borderline white supremacist. One night while cleaning tables he approached a young mother with a baby in a carrier and told her how great it was to see white people having white babies. She complained and corporate sent someone in to discuss appropriate things to say to guests. He was never fired, having worked for the company for 10+ years at this point. I sold him pot and he would always try to get me to smoke with him at his apartment. Inside, his furniture consisted of used chairs from the restaurant and a couch. He had an old computer monitor from the Windows 95 days, and a humongous, multi-paneled kitten poster on his wall. He fed the entire neighborhood's cats based on the smell and number of cats lounging about. One night, he had a top secret mission for me, to go to a doctor friend of his and pick up some important research. Turned out to be an old folks home, and this doctor was some senile ex-WW2 Nazi. Last time I helped out, I met a man who looked to be around mid-40s at the library who was new to the country and wanted to read more English books to help him with the language. I made a few standard fiction recommendations that were fairly easy to read and would hopefully provide some entertainment at the same time. He thanked me and then said that because I was kind to him he would talk to me and make me an offer. I wasn't particularly keen on it, but I wasn't in a hurry. He then proceeded to talk about life and how we all die. Except him apparently. His English wasn't the best and I imagine a lot was lost in translation. At least I hope so. I retain the vague hope I didn't encounter someone straight up insane that day. He proceeded to tell me that since I was young I could be helped. 13 at the time, everyone was given a certain amount of time to live until they died. Most people spent 24 hours a day over and over. He had found the man who gave out time and asked him why he lets people die. This man apparently said that he gave everyone the same amount of time to start with when they were born, and if anyone became his friend he would give them more if he wanted them to live forever so he could keep that friend. Since I was kind to him he offered me to introduce me to him. I declined. Warning bells were going crazy over this guy. I left quickly and exited the library. Never saw him again. If a lot was lost in translation, it honestly sounds like he could have just been trying to convert you to Christianity. I went to Yosemite a couple of years ago and decided to have a drink at the Amity Lodge. Inspiration for The Shining. Sat in the grounds admiring the view when this woman, who looked quite well to do, starts screaming at the mountain, "Speak to Emmy. Speak to Emmy," and starts doing this weird butt dance. Every chair and table was taken but no one batted an eye at this woman running around in circles, swinging crystals and screaming at the mountain. She does this for like 10 minutes before taking a seat like nothing had happened. Sometimes the weird thing isn't the weird person but the reaction of the people around them. She was a ghost. No one saw her but you obviously. I met an American guy in Dublin that had been arrested in Europe multiple times and had attempted to defect to Russia because America is too fascist and corrupt. He also mentioned being in a cult that wasn't actually a cult, they just have a bad rep. He also burned his passports on multiple occasions. Genuine nutter. Jason, born 18. All out of ideas. Guy walking the opposite way to me in the slightly sketchy area I used to live in. Huge mass of graying, matted red hair and beard, apparently striding along with huge and noble purpose. wearing nothing but boxer shorts and huge, untied work boots in nearly freezing cold weather that turned his large amounts of exposed skin salmon pink. His expression was so striking I nearly stopped and stared. It felt like he was setting out to some glorious future only he could see, beset with privations only he could guess at. Weird contrast with the whole basically no clothes thing. TLDR. Saw a tramp. A group of guys walked around my college wearing animal tails. One was a cat, one was a squirrel, and the leader wore a rattlesnake tail that actually rattled. Tunnel snakes rule. There's an older, eccentric man who works in my field, and I come across him occasionally on projects, at conferences, at meetings. He is always wearing a different bow tie, so one time we're working together, but on field work, he's wearing workwear and a cravat. I jokingly say that I almost didn't recognize him without a bow tie, and he gives me this withering stare like I'm an idiot and says bow ties are for the office, cravats are for field work. Probably my neighbor. He was a special ed kid that had a lot more freedom than he should have. He was a year older than me and had a lot of mental issues. Temper tantrums, breaking things, peeing himself, most times intentionally, up into high school, and running into crap, a lot. He ran every place he went. I don't think it was possible for him to walk, but he also ran into things a lot. I saw him smack the mirror on a bus and slide across the street into a snowbank, run head on into doors, slam into the big metal divider on those metal security doors, everything. And he always played it off like nothing happened, and then ran off. Saw him ride his bike down the big hill in front of my house when school was closed for a nice day. I bet he spent a good hour trying to get back up the hill to his house. Maybe he had no depth perception. I was once walking to uni at 7:30 in the morning. There was nobody else but me and a girl up in front. It was a freezing cold day. Suddenly a guy comes running out of one of the entrance gates in nothing but a hospital gown. He was screaming something and chased the other girl through one of the gates. Luckily before he got to me the campus security guards got a hold of him. I was really freaked out. A neighbor I had when living in an apartment. She would either hear me coming up to my place, or be watching out the window. She'd burst out of her door and start chatting me up about inane things. She'd comment on me bringing home a new girl every week when I was walking to my place with my girlfriend. It got to the point I'd park in different places and try and sneak over into my place to avoid her rushing out the door to make conversation. Then her son and sister-in-law moved in with her. They would scream at each other, chase each other down the sidewalk, and take off in the car after an argument. One day I heard glass shattering. Apparently one of them got pee and cratered the other's windshield with a stone. Then the two disappeared, and the lady burst out one day asking me if I could give her a ride to a bus station. I did, and she told me her son and daughter-in-law were in jail for drugs. She was also leaving her apartment now without bothering to inform them or take her stuff. She said it was unlocked and I could take whatever I wanted. She immediately followed this by complaining about the apartment and how many bugs there are in it. Then she goes on to tell me how she had an injury as a kid where they had to take skin from her butt cheek and graft it to her face. So she'd tell her brother he was kissing her butt when he gave her a peck on the cheek. I wasn't too put out by taking her to the bus station, as it was nearby, and I wouldn't have to deal with them again. I got back and checked out the place out of curiosity. It smelled of smoke, was dirty, and everything was old and gross. I didn't take anything, especially since I sure as heck didn't want bugs, especially bed bugs. When I was 14, I had an 18-year-old stalker. He was white but with a gigantic afro. All he ever did was listen to Hollywood Undead and threaten suicide if I didn't love him back. Now the weird part here is that he totally believed he was a character from DBZ reincarnated in real life. He'd throw himself down a flight of stairs and land in some sort of superhero power pose for dramatic effect. I got a restraining order when he tried to break into my house. I haven't heard from him since. One time, in 7th grade, the kid who sat next to me started loudly jacking off in class. Everyone froze and refused to look in his direction. I was trapped right next to him and I started crying because I didn't know what to do and no one came over, not even the teacher. His orgasm was the loudest and scariest thing ever. He sounded like a dying whale getting fricked by a macho gorilla. I don't know what happened to him after that day. Most likely expelled. When I was about 7 or 8, my dad took me to a pizza buffet that we would quite normally go to for dinner, and it was a pretty small place, so he would let me sit at the table while he went and got food from the buffet, and vice versa. It was a pretty busy night for dinner, so we sat down and ordered drinks, and my dad went up and waited in line at the buffet while I sat at the table. At the table right next to us there was a middle-aged man sitting by himself. I was always afraid of stranger danger, so I didn't make eye contact and sat patiently waiting for my dad. The man is looking right at me and he says, "Pizza, pizza, go get some pizza," and me being an awkward kid, I gave him the thumbs up and a half smile and look away. Once again, now in a very aggressive voice, he says, "Pizza, pizza, go get some pizza." Now, normally, I wouldn't be afraid of a guy who talks like a Little Caesars commercial, but he was saying it in an aggressive voice. Sure enough, a couple seconds later, my dad comes back and sits down at the table, blocking the man's view of me. I go up and get my food, sit down and enjoy some pizza, and eventually my dad gets up to go to the buffet line again. Sure enough, Papa John is sitting right there still mean mugging me, and says something along the lines of, "Was that some good frickin' pizza?" At this point I am traumatized by this dude, but I was too afraid to say anything, so I just kept my head down and waited for my dad to come back. My dad got back and asked if I was okay, and I said yes because I was afraid this other dude would try and kill us or something if I told my dad. We eat pizza, and I go up to get a refill on my drink. As I do, the creepy guy comes up behind me and said something that still haunts me to this day. He says, "You know they pee in the cups after they wash them." I quick ran back to the table and told my dad I was full. We left a couple minutes after. That was about 15 years ago now. I ended up telling my dad about it finally a couple years ago. He told me I should have said something, but I was way too scared at the time. Man, what the frick. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.